Back to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Greetings to everyone joining us tonight virtually. Thank you for tuning in to our board meeting. I will need a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
For the moving properly second, we approve the agenda for tonight. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Can you hear us? Can you hear? Okay. Approval of the minutes for February 9th, 2021 and February 24th, 2021. The motion. The moving properly second, we approve the minutes for February 9th, 2021 and February 24th, 2021. All in favor? Motion carried. Public participation?
Don't have any.
None. Okay. Good news.
We have some great news. Ms. Hills is going to bring in a student that was unable to participate during the mid-year graduation. And so now we want to honor her and her accomplishment for being a Washington County graduate. We have our graduate ready.
Almost.
We've got to get some pictures now. This is a big moment. Got it? All right, you want us to get a picture with your phone too? Okay. All right, can you? All right, Ms. Peel. This is an accomplishment.
This one.
Right there. Got it? Yay!
Okay, bring it down a little bit.
Let me see your face.
Yeah, now we face. Wow, I know. I didn't see it in your eyes.
Okay, now the two of you. One of each side. Then hand back. Okay. Awesome, awesome.
So on the behalf of the North Carolina School Board Association and the Washington County Board of Education, by the power invested in us, we now pronounce you a graduate of Washington County. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Proud of you.
Smile.
She's smiling.
Anaya is special because she got her own pronouncement right by herself. Nobody. Congratulations, best of luck, and Godspeed on your endeavors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. You're making that cowboy hit look good.
Watch it, Jeff. Go there. Is the presentation inside the system, inside the room?
All right.
You ready?
Well, it was just one that wasn't.
Okay. This time we're gonna recognize and identify Gerald TC Campus and tag the bids.
That's kind of hard.
Are you all coming? Whenever you're ready. MFBA. She's accepting for someone else. She's accepting for the person.
Okay, you said that for Raymond, McCray, okay. All right. All right, and I'm gonna pin you here.
Let them come by, let them come by.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Four.
This JT.
Congratulations. Come right on.
Proud of you guys.
What this man?
I did too.
I was amazing to make sure you get one.
Oh, yeah.
I told you.
I got plenty of
I
them.
told
You gonna do a group over here?
you. Come right on.
You all go.
Yes, sir.
Oh, we got one more.
We got one more.
We on
Oh,
the
we
end.
got-
Don't let y'all come.
Okay, we got to
Nice to meet you.
Get between yourself and it.
All right, I'll get down.
Yeah.
Stand real tall.
All right, let's see. Inhale.
Oh, Lord.
And then- Awesome.
Yay.
I said, who?
Thank you.
Your keys, okay.
Thank you.
Huh? Miss Sampson? Miss Brown? Miss Simpson and Miss Brown?
Yes. Ms. Graham, we want to publicly recognize you, and we wanted to highlight you in your own special month for all that you do to support all of our schools. And Ms. Simpson, we appreciate your leadership and what you do to assist the social worker and the counselors. But Ms. Brown is always available to help our kids. It doesn't matter what the day is, what the day of the week is. You know, we know how to connect.
Yes.
So everything you do is appreciated and recognized.
Inhale. Awesome. Thank you.
I think you guys connected.
We'll just open or close.
Open. Washington County Schools will produce globally competitive students. Discussion of school reopening. Madam Superintendent,
Yes, sir.
your recommendation, please.
Okay, I recommend, with the, yes, sir, the State Board of Ed, last week, boards, made a resolution that they would like for all LEAs under local, choice to send children back face to face. And in the resolution, it's just one page. By the end of March. And the recommendation that the State Board of Ed, went over and over was that it was, 5 days a week, every child that chooses to attend face to face. And it was by the end of March. So my recommendation to the board, is just a recommendation, but my recommendation is to return face to face on Tuesday, March 16th, Thursday, March 18th, the following week, Tuesday, March 23rd, and Thursday, March 25th. Then the last week in March, my recommendation is to begin the week and start on Monday, the 29th, Tuesday, the 30th, Wednesday, the 31st, and Thursday, April 1st. Then we go to spring break. Spring break is already in the calendar and approved April 2nd through April 9th. You can stop. Okay. And then, following that resolution that the North Carolina State Board of Ed recommended, begin the 5-day week after spring break. And then my further recommendation is that we had 2 remote learning days built in on April the 12th, the week of April 12th, on that Wednesday, April 14th, and May 5th, that they become regular school days, because we've been in remote learning. So we can just switch those in our calendar to reflect different remote days. But that's my recommendation. I also recommend that the hours of operation be 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And my reason for my recommendation is that we have teachers that are going to have to be doing both virtual and face-to-face. So I recommend that we end the school day at 2 p.m. to give teachers a little bit of catch-up time with getting back with parents that they need to be reached regarding remote learners.
So that kind of caught me by surprise, because I know that we get to go back, but I don't think that they're making us go back to a full 5 days. I think I thought we agreed to the 2 days, that we would do the 2 days.
Well, what they said is that they wanted you to follow the guidance that was provided in Strong Schools NC, and I have a copy of that with me. It was updated on March 3rd, and that very clearly says 5 days a week.
I'm fine with it, but I can't do that. I don't mind kids going back, and then I know you said start back March the 29th, 30th, and 31st, but we talked about 2 days if we go back. Y'all remember that? 2 days a week. I don't think we can send them back 5 days. I can't do that. I know they want us to, Strong Schools want us to, that's correct. I know they want us to, that's on their recommendation. So I thought that we were going to at least do 2 days a week, start the last week in March. Because I thought if we waited till after April, the state will make us do the 5 days. But I think right now we have the option of doing, the 2 days. If we're gonna say go back a full 5 days, I can't do that tonight. I'm not comfortable with it. But I know there's some things that we need to look at as far as the building. I was more so leaning toward, let's try 2 days to the end of the year, until they say officially. Right now, it's not official that we go back 5 days, it's only, I don't even think that we're ready to try it. We haven't even tried it 2 days.
That's what the legislation wants.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels. That's gonna be on you guys.
When the 5-day week start, what we.
That's after Easter break.
Probably
It's
start
supposed to start April 1st,
on April 1st.
but I mean, Ms. Rick is saying that it's not his recommendation
No,
that.
when you making the recommendation of the superintendent, what I'm saying is, I think we have the option now to talk about it.
Yes, sir.
And that recommendation, and this, I know it's a public meeting, so we got to be open about it. I'm just saying, I can't go with 5 days. We haven't even discussed, we haven't even tried the 2 days. That's what we talked about, trying the 2 days, at least at the beginning of the year.
And my recommendation is a 2-day week, at least for 2 weeks in March, and then move to, the request is move that the state has recommended on the 5-day week, but I don't have the authority to do that. I'm just making my recommendation.
I think we should just go back, this is me, I have voted, I think we should try, let's try the last week. That would be 2 days, that would be what do we agree to, Tuesday and Thursday?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that's what we talking
So
about.
why don't we do, that's what we talked, so why don't we just do the Tuesday and Thursday? Then they'll go on spring break, then they'll come back, and we'll do it, let's see how the 2 days work out, then try to move into it. That's just me, man, I can't see a full 5 days right off, I can't push that on nobody.
Madam Superintendent,
Yes, sir.
parents still have an option.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I'm
sir.
saying, so they have an option, they're not making it.
They will continue to have an option. What is out there is that, the state board of ed, the governor, the general assembly, everyone has encouraged us to reopen the buildings 5 days a week.
We're saying give people an option.
5 days a week, yes, sir.
I
But
think-
if boards do not do that on their own, they're trying to avoid having to create some state mandate because they'd like for it to stay with some flexibility locally. But they're not saying that they won't mandate it, but they're hoping that school boards will.
We're gonna give kids an option, we've been all virtual. We're gonna give kids an option to come back to the building 2 days a week, that's right. But they're gonna have to tell me 5 days, they're gonna have to come and show me 5 days. I did not know anything about 5 days. I know that they wanted us to, she's right about the strong school too. They are asking to do that, but we're not in a position to do that yet. We haven't even tried 2 days. Let's see how this is gonna work for us.
That's what I say, and the schools are not safe, and we're gonna put me at 5 days, I'm sorry, no.
Doctor,
Yes,
how
sir.
many schools do you affiliate to?
Nobody 2 days a week. Everybody gonna do days.
No, sir. No, sir. There are school systems that have been back.
Not close to us. Not an outlet work.
There are schools that are back 5 days a week.
Let
That are
them,
close to us,
let
that
them,
have been going since August, and
Well,
some of
let
them October.
let them test it. Majority of them, a lot of them are charter schools too. Let them test it. Let them test it. But it's up to y'all. Y'all can vote to send them back for every day if y'all want to, but I'm not gonna vote on it tonight. Now, I'm being honest. I'm not gonna do that. Now, I've agreed to having the kids to test it out, but I will not sit behind the desk and vote on sending kids back 5 days. We need to try 2 days. You give them an option. When they come back and say, now I'm moving to 5 days, we gotta do it. But I can't do that tonight. I'm sorry. I didn't even know, that hit me there. I know we talked about 2 days, but we can't do 5 days.
Legislature the legislature wanted this 5 days, but they don't have a people veto. But they do not have enough people to override these veto.
With Senate Bill 37, you're correct. They do have some others out there that can move forward, but they really don't want to do that. They want,
That's what I was.
yeah, they want it to say that local school boards are.
So aren't we giving an option? Aren't we giving an option to do the 2 days? I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's an option.
We're gonna come back after spring, we're gonna come back after spring break. Everybody been out and put kids in school for 5 days a week. Well, they let them tell me that, or tell you that. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna vote on that. I can't do that. That's just me. So if y'all comfortable with doing it, I'll call for the motion.
My take is, the kids need to go back, period.
They do.
They need to go back. I mean, you see it, they're not, you fall behind. And in the long term, we know that, but the legislation said you gotta go back. I guess it's an option to go back 5 days. Now, in talking, we thought that, and the reason was we could go back to 2 days on trial basis. Try to see how it work out. Then, if it look good, no COVID-19 appeared, even though teachers are getting the vaccine, so that's up to bill on. But I mean, right now, I would say 2 days. 2 days.
No, she said go back April 5 days this year.
No, but that's what I'm saying, but she started with the 2 days.
Yeah, so we're
And
gonna do
then after spring break, come back to 5.
5 days.
Right.
That was my
Yeah, I heard
recommendation,
it.
that board, you do what, you feel that we need to do, and
But why can't we test this to see how it works before we just say a full, come back 5 days? We haven't even prepared for our teachers 5 days. We haven't even, has this been addressed to the principal for 5 days? See, that's what I'm saying. The thing about it is when we come in meetings like this, I would rather that, tonight you got principals by this and this, saying they ain't heard this the first time either.
well, they are made aware that strong schools came up with new, and that's our guidance.
Well, that is our guidance. That is our guidance, but what I'm saying is, and I don't want this meeting to get out of hand. What I'm saying is that we're not going, we don't have to follow that recommendation, we need to do what's there. Let's test it, we need to test it. At least test it.
Yes, sir, I'm ready.
Well, that would be, the initial couple of weeks would be the test, would it not? Would that be the test?
Not to me.
How long
You
you
don't
need to
even,
test?
you don't even have,
Give me an idea, how long we need to test?
until they tell us 5 days.
No, that's too indefinite.
No, it's not.
I need, for me,
Y'all just
I
said
need
they're
a
gonna do it.
finite number. A month,
Okay, so this is what y'all do. If y'all comfortable with 5 days, then call it to the floor. I'll call it for a motion and y'all can vote on 5 days. That's what you want.
I'm trying to have a conversation. We're supposed to be in the middle of a discussion. I'm trying to have a discussion.
But that's what I'm saying.
I'm trying to have a discussion to see how long we need to test it before we can go to that. Do we need to go from 2 to 3? And then from 3 days to 4 days, and then go to 5?
We initially agreed to.
And we initially agreed
Okay.
2 months ago to be back in by now too, but that changed.
It should
So
be-
now, with that,
So
what
is
we're
the whole
saying,
world and the whole year.
you got that right.
So I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say is, and this is how I feel about it. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I personally, we have talked about 2 days. Run it into you don't got that many days left. August is coming. Let the people see how this stuff is gonna work.
Before then.
You what?
I had summer school before, we will have summer school.
Yes, sir, there is.
No, we don't know that.
Yes,
Well,
yeah, we do.
House Bill 82 is picking up momentum,
Yes, we do.
and if it passes, it's requiring a 6-week, 5-day week, summer school program.
Okay, that's a requirement.
No, not yet.
No, I'm saying that's gonna be a requirement, right? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. And require, when you say it's a requirement, okay, but I know what we initially talked about. That's all I'm saying. I know what we talked about initially. I didn't know anything about 5 days until right now.
We went.
I know what legislature said. Now, I read this stuff, and I know what this is. Here, Birmingham said, they make us go back 5 days. And you can't tell me they didn't say it, but they were all right. So they tried to go back 5 days, but we said in the last board meeting, if we go back, that we would try it 2 days until school get out and come back and then we start school like we're supposed to. If the Lord allow us to get this COVID, don't come back. But the way they're taking our over and stuff.
It's gonna be there. Dr. Clark,
Yes, sir.
what is our consequence, even though I'm hearing the legislation is pushing the buttons, legislation, well, the DPI is doing the same thing. What is the consequence that we don't, do what we think that we do? 5 days.
I don't think there's any right now, except that, like, for instance, we've applied for the 21st Century Summer Learn Grant. And we probably wouldn't be a strong candidate for it if, not as strong as other counties, that it is a competitive grant. But, they would have an edge over us if they were already going more days, but that one, I would say, would be out there, but, right now, I don't know, Chairman, that no one has mandated. The desire was that local would take care of.
That's what we're doing.
And,
We have people coming to give them the test of quality of air in the building. This board knows that they're coming to test the quality of the air, the HVAC system, make sure we have proper circulation that we need in the building. Because that's one of the top priorities with COVID-19. We're gonna have kids in the building, they can come test it and tell us what the quality of the air is. We're gonna say 5 days a week, and don't even got a report back. I think we need to get it tested, let them come and do what they have to do, report back to the Board of Education on the test for the HVAC to make sure we got proper circulation, and then bring it back to us so we can know how to move forward. If we can do 5 days a week. But right now, we need to get we agreed to 2 days.
Haven't they tested it already?
No.
there is a history in your closed session, that after our last month, I needed the history, so I went back and went through all the reports, and those are the highlights from the different years of what all has been done.
I thought we had it tested for right now.
We had it scheduled, but the board decided to wait until a higher occupancy.
Yeah, but we didn't hope the board, well, we were told that we had to have 50% capacity.
I recommended that you have better accuracy with your results.
Yeah,
if
you
you
should.
have a higher capacity.
I said the company, you said the company, last time y'all said the company said that.
The company will come whenever we tell them to
That's what
come.
I'm saying, but I thought that that's why we said we were waiting, because we.
Yeah, but it won't be for the company to come if there was no additional.
A glowing report with reduced capacity.
Wait, then we need to at least get them to come check on the day.
That's what we're gonna do, she got it rescheduled already. Also, it depends on how many kids are in the room.
Well, it will affect it, and, we have different amounts, per grade, but all of them are able to socially distance, K through 12, so. We don't have any.
No.
There are a couple of classes at the high school that she needs to move into a larger space, but it's just a couple of periods. And it's just a couple of classes because we just don't feel like the footage in that room will fit all of those that want to come back face to face, but they already have plans.
So we need to,
I have to go.
so before you leave this, long, we need to just make a vote.
Okay.
So,
I recommend that you hear, when you say the superintendent's recommendation, and you see if you have a vote, you accept that.
give us a couple of this morning.
My recommendation started Tuesday, March 16th, for 2 days a week. But your recommendation is where it goes to postpone that to March, the end of the last week.
Because I know they wanted us to go back March, so we still going back in March. Then they'll be out for spring break, they'll give them a break.
So they'll be in 2 days.
Yeah.
1 day in March. If
Yeah, that's what
if you wait till last week, you'll have March 30th.
Okay.
And then they'll be out for spring break.
We can do Monday and Wednesday,
No,
We said Tuesday, Thursday, the whole time.
but because we're going back, if we can just say those days, we Monday, we start Tuesday and Thursday.
If that's what
You
you
get 2
want.
days in, because it's still a break. If we go back in, we can say Monday and Wednesday, and then after spring break, we Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay.
I guess I'm trying to look at parents and how they have to arrange things. Because if we do Monday and Wednesday and then flip it back after spring break, it may affect somebody's schedule.
Yeah, that's true, but could we let them know, because the day is just the 9th.
Right, but if I have to go into work and say, well, this is what they're doing, but then they're gonna change it again in a couple of weeks.
So you just go back on the 23rd.
That's what I'm gonna do. The 23rd, how about the 27th?
We do Tuesday and Thursday, so.
And this on the Tuesday, according to the schedule I'm looking at.
23rd.
This schedule here is not right.
The 20th and the 21st.
That's next year, calendar.
It's two of them in here. One says 20 to 21. 20 to 21.
That's it.
It's Tuesday, 20 to 21.
Yeah, I've got
Twenty,
one says
And then there's 21, 22.
20.
Okay.
But it's the two new
So you're
schedules.
looking Tuesday, March 23rd, and Thursday, March 25th. And then you have March 30th and, or 29th.
No, you said the 30th. Tuesday.
Okay. Well, you got April 1st to Thursday, and that's not a vacation day.
Oh, okay.
So March 23rd, 25th, the 30th and the 1st.
That's what I just said.
And then
I go back last week, you would get the 30th and the 1st. Yeah.
But again, that's still 2 days, and then they're out for.
Okay, that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is 2 days. Okay. Well. So do we have any recommendations in, for the superintendent?
You heard her recommendation, which was to resume 2 days a week, and you said the 23rd.
Well, I initially, and we're shooting for March
Oh,
16th,
she got 23rd on the day too.
but I do, yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir. That would be the following week.
So we accept that recommendation. I will,
Okay, so
You get a motion like that.
so what we need a motion to, accept the superintendent recommendation for March the 20, going at March the 23rd and starting March 23rd, 2 days a week. Tuesday and Thursday.
And that's the end of the motion.
We need a motion to, is that indefinite? Or is that more?
That's what I'm,
Yeah.
we gonna come back again, and we're gonna come back in April, we're gonna review.
and see where
They say so.
My recommendation is to go with the superintendent's first recommendation. Start school. 2 days a week, spring break, come back 5. That's my.
Okay, who got a motion?
Yeah, that's your motion, come back 5 days.
That's his motion.
My motion, if it fails, it fails.
There's a motion on the floor.
I second that motion.
Let him repeat, because I didn't get it. What's your deal?
My motion is to go with the superintendent's original recommendation, 2 days a week, spring break, and then come back 5 days a week.
Condensing the 2 days a week, effective the week of March the 22nd, so starting on the 23rd.
What work was the sixth?
My initial recommendation was 2 days a week, the 16th, 18th, 2 days a week, the 23rd and 25th. And then beginning the week of March 29th, so the 4 days in preparation for when we return back after spring break, it would be, the expectation of the state was that we would begin a 5-day week in April. And then I had recommended not having a remote day on the April 12th and or April 14th and May 5th, and keeping them 5 days a week. That was my initial recommendation.
That's my motion.
That was the motion then.
Okay.
And then I second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor of that motion?
Suggest you have people raise their hands.
Motion carried. Y'all gonna go that 5 days a week after 8.
We gonna give it a shot.
Okay, that's what y'all agree on. I want to be known that I did not hold on that.
I know what about it. I have to with COVID. I'm gonna tell it.
You don't have, you ain't gotta do it.
Yes, I am. And I know what COVID do to you. Ain't nobody children that in school. And they have a choice. They still have a choice whether they go back or not. They don't have to go. They gotta go back at home. But we're offering them educational service.
We work with 2 days too.
And that's it.
The next thing on the agenda is an approval for a field trip to Newburgh High School. This is for students to take the ACT, the early college road, and receive grant funding to pay for the test. And so, we would have to pick up the cost of the activity bus travel and driver, because they actually had more students interested in taking the ACT than they thought, and so it would take all of their funding to pay for the ACT itself, but that's the next thing.
Let me make one comment before we move on. Ms. Chair mentioned what's next on the agenda. I was elected chairman of the school board. I made the call on the agenda, this time move on to the next issue.
That is fine.
That's what I would do.
That is fine.
So I would ask for that respect at least. I don't care how nobody else. But I don't do me like that.
No
But
problem.
I listen to everybody's concerns. And I feel like, man, y'all take on my meetings enough. I take on enough. I know what to do. I know exactly what to do. December, if y'all want to change it, do that too. I know what to do. So now, the field experience. Now I'm okay with that. So we need a motion to approve the field experience for Washington Early College High School.
Chairman, motion to approve both things.
Been moved and properly second, all in favor? Motion carried. Washington County Schools be led by 21st century professionals, approval of the personnel report.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve personnel report.
Moving properly second, all in favor? Motion carried. Washington County Schools be voted in support of our 21st century system. Discussion of approval of the academic calendar. Update for the 2021-2022 school year, Ms. Peterson.
These calendars are the same. These calendars are the same that I'm looking at. These dates.
It's the new calendar that they made, they didn't tell us about the calendar, they bring the board.
Right.
They not that separate calendar.
Okay, I'm looking at the dates and it looks like they all the same. It looks the same, the calendar not changed year to year. The rest of it is.
Gotcha. So the last year calendar,
I think it's just next year, it's a proposal for next year.
I know that.
Are you talking about the part up here?
Yes.
I think I just forgot to change that.
Okay,
We copy it, so we have the basic structure and then we update all of the dates.
okay,
So, I think literally the top number wasn't changed.
okay.
And,
All right, that's what I was.
And I said to Lucinda today, I said, I've gone over this 15 times because I miss a date every single time that I don't change. And I found it just walking it.
So we're looking at 3 different calendars.
There are 3 separate calendars. To kind of explain it to you, the one that has the 3 yellow days on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. That's the high school early college calendar.
Okay,
The one that has the green start date on the 23rd is the traditional elementary and middle school calendar. And then the one that has the 5 green days, the 16th through the 20th, would be the early start calendar that we prepared only if legislation passes that says we have to start early like it did this year. We just wanted to be overly prepared. Correct, and it's only an if, but this year we had to come back at like the end of June to make changes, because they required us to have 5 additional days, and that's part of the presentation. But, so we prepared one because there's talk of them doing the same thing again this year. So the calendar committee wanted to prepare one in case that happens.
thank you.
Are you ready for me again, or do you just need to wait? Okay, thank you for letting me come before you guys this evening. I'm Julie Simpson. I'm here to represent our calendar committee team for the 2021-2022 Washington County Schools academic calendars. Just to start, the calendar committee was chosen by the principals. They chose 2 people from each of their schools to represent their schools. The principals were also invited to be a part of that committee. And then all of the required district office staff that have different parts of the school. So those are there. We came together 6 different times between January and last Friday to develop the calendars. And we made sure that each time we looked at the calendar, we went back to the state law requirements and made sure we were meeting all of those. So the general state requirements, that we can have a no start date earlier than Monday closest to August 26th. And you'll see that there's also a caveat now that says that if a waiver is approved, that start date can be no earlier than the Monday closest to August 19th. And that was because of what happened for the 2021 school year, where they made us all come back on that Monday of August 19th. And we had to put those 5 extra days into the calendar. It has to cover at least 9 calendar months if it's a traditional school. It must have a minimum of 185 days or 1,025 hours of instruction. The calendars will present today for both the high school and the traditional calendar will be based on 185 days. And the early start would then be based on the 1,025 hours plus 5 days of instruction. They have to have a minimum of 10 annual leave days, and there has to be the same or an equivalent number of legal holidays that the state requires, and our state requires 11. There must be a total of 9 teacher work days, and 2 of those teacher work days must be optional days, where teachers can choose to come or not come on these. There cannot be school on Sunday for any reason. Veterans Day must be one of those 11 holidays, and that staff days cannot go over 215 days. And that's really important when we look at the calendar, because when you look at, if you take 185 and you add to that the 10 annual days, the 11 holidays, and the 9 teacher work days, that does equal 215 days. So there's very little wiggle room when you look at it on the calendar like that. The state pays them for 215 days. So the 2 calendar types that we're going to focus on tonight are the traditional calendar, and for both schools, we have a early start for our high school and our early college, because the early college is an innovative cooperative high school, and our high school is a restart. Allowing them to start early allows our students to start classes at the community college with the other classes. If we would wait until the 23rd, 24th that week, the students would be starting after the community college has already started, and that would put them at a great disadvantage. Our calendar committee did look at and prepare a year-round calendar to share with the community. That calendar was voted upon as not being the option that they wanted to go with. So while we did look at it, it's not being proposed tonight because it was not what the community, the students, the parents, and the staff wanted. So we had 209 votes for this calendar survey. That is roughly 120 votes more than we had last year. So I was really excited about the additional participation in the calendar survey this year. You can see that there were 93 parents, 93 staff, 23 students, and 0 community members. But we know that our community members are also our parents, they're also our staff. There wasn't anyone who wasn't directly connected to the survey or to the school that took the survey. So we're going to begin by looking at the high school and the early college calendar. So when we look at this calendar, we had 183 votes to approve the calendar currently as is, and then there were 26 people that had improvements that they suggested. When we looked at the comments based on the survey, several comments were made in regards to the amount of time that teachers had at the end of grading periods, the lack of time that was at the end of grading periods. So we took that concern back to the calendar committee on Friday to look. And because there aren't any other days that we can add in, we can't add a mandatory work day in because there's 185 student days. So there isn't a day to add back in. So we came up with the idea of adding early release days at the end of quarters to make sure that they're matching as much as possible to a week or so before, between 7 and 10 days before the end of their grading period. They would have the afternoon to be able to catch up on grading, get grades submitted on time. And then we did the same thing on the elementary calendar, but what we did with the elementary is we actually lined them up, those early release days on the high school early release pickup days, report card pickup, because there's about a 3-week window. And so you can see it, they kind of match. And we'll go over the days that match a little bit later in the presentation, so you don't have to go back and forth. I have them all listed. So when we're looking at the requirements for the high school and the early college calendar, making sure that we're hitting all of those points that are in legislation. We do have the first day of school starting August 5th, which is allowed because they are both a restart and innovative cooperative high school. There are 11 holidays, including Veterans Day. Veterans Day, and there needs to be 11. There are 10 annual days. We have 10 annual days in the calendar. There are a total of 9 teacher workdays. 6 of those are mandatory, and then we have 3 optional. So we've given them a chance of 1 additional optional day where they can choose or not choose to use leave time to come in or not, to make their mandatory days. We have 185 student days, 215 staff days. From the early bird leave, we have 3 days for teachers. That would be for them to be able to go back into their room and work on grading. And then 2 days, that would be report card pickup. And our high school chooses to do report card pickup for the first 9 weeks and the third 9 weeks, but not the second 9 weeks, because they've already switched classes at that point. And it's easier for parents to get up with those teachers via email, because there would be all the new classes. The last day of school would be May 24th. May 24th, and graduation would be that Friday, May 27th. That's the high school calendar that the committee has developed.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all taking away Thanksgiving, how many days did that? They had a week out with, how many days did that? Y'all taking that week, Thanksgiving holiday, that week, are y'all taking that week?
There is the Wednesday is an optional day, and then the Thursday and Friday are holidays.
So last year, we had a week out for Thanksgiving.
That's correct.
But y'all done changed it, they're not gonna have that whole week.
So that's correct. The calendar is not. As we go through, you'll see that there were 25% of the comments that we received on the survey were directly 25% of the comments were directly in relationship to the Thanksgiving holiday.
That's what the question about that y'all had about that week, that Thanksgiving, right? That was all the different stuff that is about that week. That Thanksgiving week. We had Thanksgiving week last year. The same time the kids were the staff was out too.
Yes, ma'am.
But this year, just coming up, y'all taking those days from you and making it mandatory that they work.
So
Why?
So there's not a taking away. We build the calendar as a committee. It was brought up in the calendar committee. It was shared in the calendar committee. There were concerns originally brought up. And we shared about the confusion of those days. People shared about how there are multitudes of payroll calendars. And while it was very beneficial for our teachers, there were other staff members that it was not beneficial for adding those summer days in. When we saw that there were 25% of the comments, it was brought back up on Friday, and we looked at both the pros and cons for that on Friday. One of those cons would be that the high school would either have to start in July, the last Friday in July, to be able to have all of their days in the semester happen before Christmas break, or they would have to take 2 days before Christmas break and then 3 days after Christmas break. The 3 days we come back from Christmas break and do exams, which is not positive for them either. The other option for us to put that back in would have been to do an offset semester, which would have required them to have 89 days, excuse me, in the first semester and 96 in the second semester. And that's 7 full days. That's a week and a half of instruction that kids would be missing from the first semester that they would get in the second semester. And the high school teachers were adamant that they would rather not have a Thanksgiving break, an extended Thanksgiving break on the calendar committee than they would have that offset semester go into July or separate. So the calendar committee made the decision not to look to put it back in, but it was offered to do that. We allowed them to vote. In that meeting, there were 3 people that voted to add it back in out of the 14 that were totally in.
And this part, the only reason why it came back up again for conversation was because of the survey results.
Correct.
And that's why it came back up, but, you know, this sent to make sure that she has representation from all schools when we had those meetings.
That's why.
It always is.
It is, but it was too much drama.
Yes, ma'am. And there always is, no matter what you do, but I'll have to come in her for not rushing the process.
It comes out different than what I'm saying, and you know that, Judy. You know what was stated. But I got another question. Why is it that we can't go back to the same schedule? What is it that we don't want to change schedule every year?
So
The days change, the days change.
this calendar is very similar to last year's calendar.
That they don't have that.
So this calendar is very similar to last year's calendar. However, there are two different calendars that can be looked at. You can look at instructional days or you can look at instructional hours. For the previous 2 years, and it might have been before that, but I've only been dealing with the previous 2 years. I'm in my position. And so for the previous 2 years, we looked at instructional hours. This year, we can very clearly say that even though on our schedule, there is well beyond the 1,025 hours because we have reduced days, because we don't have students in person, we can clearly say that we are not meeting all of those instructional hours. It is a conversation across the entire state about whether to continue to go with the instructional hours or to go with instructional days. And we were asked to continue to go with instructional days because that provided, that ensured students had the required amount. And the state could not come back later on and say, you didn't meet the instructional time that's required by the state because you didn't send the kids to school, but 8 to 2, and your calendar should have been 8 to 3 every day. And so we are trying to ensure that we are meeting the instructional needs of students to the fullest ability, even though we know that this year, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to do that. So we looked at the calendar and choosing hours or days a little bit differently. But if you'll note, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Trump.
But now the time for next year will be 8 to 3, right now, 8 to 2.
Yeah, it would, we have not secured the times.
Okay.
And
Got the day, so I know we used to have a little extra time built in the school day, that way if we ever fell short
Right.
days in weather,
right,
we had enough hours, we had enough
Right.
seat times that could compensate for that.
right.
Yeah.
I think the safety net going forward into next year, I recommend going by days and not hours.
Then they say hours, 100. Then they
The
say.
state says that we can choose whether we do the 185 days or the 1,025 hours. But so the state's not gonna say you have to do one or you have to do
Well,
one.
what did we do last year?
Last year we did calendar based on hours.
And we have not met those hours.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
We didn't have nothing to do with it.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you,
But
but
it,
as we plan for next year, we want to, you know, in good faith, plan to make sure that we are following the state expectation.
and if our plan is to continue to allow students to be remote next year, to allow parents to have that choice. Those remote students would have to be online the same amount of hours that our regular ed students were in, if we do an hours-based hour. So those hours would have to line up if we move forward next year, coming back full time, and students still being able to choose for them.
And face to face.
Correct. So if you look, our start date and our end date for our high school calendar are exactly the same as they were last year. They, even though we've like moved forward a day, they are the same start and end date as last year.
You know, I'm gonna say this. Even though we had a pandemic, our teachers worked,
The same,
and they worked that.
the same.
Yeah.
And the calendar's not
Students
about,
were not doing.
the calendar, the hours aren't in regards to teachers working, the hours are in regards to student physical instruction. And I understand that. And that's what we're trying to make sure that next year, while we couldn't help it this year, we've thought through what that looks like for next year, when the state says, okay, show me how these remote kids have met the 1,025 hours or the 185 days. And if we don't put the 185 days in, if the remote students' time is less than the regular face-to-face students' time, we won't be able to show that we've met their the minimal instructional requirement in the state gives us.
But Ms. Clark, that also helped when the teachers wanted some early release days to be able to do some grades and things like that. Because we were doing days, we could put in some early release days to help the teachers out in the grading period. So it really was a committee conversation.
So those are,
I know, but what I'm trying to say, y'all taking these people on holidays, they're planning to go, you know, their holidays, they got to take a holiday too. Y'all taking their holiday, they had the whole week out for Thanksgiving. But yet still now, y'all taking their Thanksgiving, they got to work 2 days. Thanksgiving is,
Don't have to work 2 days, Thanksgiving.
but they had that whole week out last year.
Right, but they not always had a whole week.
But they had it out last year. And they planned their trips and stuff around there.
And it
They
was a
go
nice.
visit their parents and stuff. And I bet you anybody want to visit one, I bet you the other kids want.
and I understand that, and in the end, it was a great benefit for our county. It was a draw that a lot of teachers liked. And the calendar committee in the end decided that at this point, it was not in the best interest of everyone to put it back into the calendar.
Because it would shortchange the high school kids.
Any other questions about the high school or college before I go into the elementary? So, we did post 2 different calendars, and allow people to look through those and choose. Everyone on the calendar committee went back and talked to their staffs about the 2 different calendar types, so everybody could be informed on what the process looks like. We did have, once again, 209 responses, with 144 EE, 68.9% of the vote going for the traditional calendar, where 31.1% of the vote went to that year-long calendar, which was about 65 votes. So once again, we will not present a year-round calendar for your approval tonight. It was not chosen, so you will only be presenting the traditional calendar. So this calendar had 175 approved votes as is, with 34 improvements. During our calendar committee, when we looked at those survey comments, the biggest comment again was about there not being time at the end of the 9 weeks. Because of that, we did add 3 early release days that matched the high school calendar. There was also a very good point that was put out. There was no break between January, the report card release in January for the elementary calendar, the 27th of January, all the way through July, March 31st. So there were about 8 weeks where there was no break for teachers or students to kind of do any kind of grading or whatnot. And the high school calendar had a holiday on the 21st of February. And they had a holiday because we are required to put 11 holidays in the school calendar that teachers get paid for, but their calendar did not go all the way through Memorial Day, which ended up being the 30th. And so because it wasn't within their physical calendar, we couldn't give them the holiday on the 30th. So we had to give them an 11th holiday, an 11th day somewhere in the calendar. We batted that around all over the place, and then we came up with President's Day. So the high school calendar does have President's Day off for the teachers, but that we are able to put that into the elementary calendar, because we have to give them Memorial Day, because that is a state holiday. So we put an early release day, on that 21st, to allow the kids, the high school kids would already be home, the elementary school kids would come in the morning, and then they would be released, and then the teachers would have that afternoon. So once again, just reviewing those requirements, we do have a start date of August 23rd. It's a traditional calendar. We have 11 holidays, including Veterans Day. There are the 10 annual leave days. There are 9 total work days, 6 being mandatory and 3 being optional, which is one more than what the state requires. It is 185 days for students and 215 days for staff. There are 4 days in the calendar that are early release for teachers. And then when I say that, they are for teachers to work, not like the teachers release early, just wanted to clarify that. And then 3 days for report card pickup, and that would be between a week and 7 days after the grading period ends. And then their last day of school would be June 9th. June 9th. So when we look at the differences in the calendar, obviously our first days of school are different. So the high school will start August 5th, where our elementary would start August 23rd. There would be that break of time where the elementary school students would not, would be home without their, older siblings or whatnot. And then October 1st would be an early release for our high school. We know that an early release for the high school isn't nearly as bad as, the opposite way when it's an early release in school. So I've highlighted those in different colors. November 4th would be one of those days where our high school students are in a full day school and our elementary school students have an early release, and that's for their report card pickup. Then we have December 3rd. It's the opposite again. So the high school's getting out early. January 13th and January 27th are full days for the high school and early release for the elementary school. And that is that where the high school doesn't do a report card pickup in January because they've already changed semesters, and then the report card pickup for the elementary middle school students. Then we have no school on February 21st, like I said, that holiday that we had to give to the high schools to make sure we were meeting that calendar law, and then an early release for the elementary school students, so it's not really that big of an impact for parents. Same thing with March 4th, an early release for that end of grading period time for teachers, for the full day for elementary. Then we flip that for the report card pickup March 31st. And then we're out of school starting May 25th for the high school, and then the elementary students stay in school. So there are 4 days in the calendar besides those first couple of weeks that we aren't able to line up and make sure that, the older students are home at the same time as the younger students. And that's about average what happens every year, where we're not able to completely align them. There's about 4 that we just can't maneuver to be able to match. As I shared, we had 145 comments total, and most of the comments were based on, I don't want year round, I don't want year round, I don't think year round. At this point, it's not good for students. Most of the comments were completely in regard to year round, but since we're not talking about that calendar type, that's no time for teachers at the end of the quarters. Those were addressed. There are some of the comments that were shared directly, and we did address that in the calendar committee. And calendar committee's idea was to add those early release days and to give them time, and we tried to match them up as much as possible to ensure that they had that time to make sure that report cards were ready to go when they needed to. And then the removal of Thanksgiving break. And like I said again, this was a calendar committee decision. We brought it back to them because there was about 25% of the comments that specifically talked about this. And the committee decided that we weren't going to go back and add that in. So those are the 2 calendars that we are proposing for next year. We did create This year, the calendar law changed, end of May, early part of June, and said you have to start August 19th. These additional days have to be, they cannot be virtual days. There has to be something where the kids come and meet teacher, pick up work, whatever. And they had to be in addition to what you already had in your calendar. So that is the same talk that's happening now, across the state, to see if that's gonna happen. We didn't want to be ill prepared as a calendar committee, and not prepare something in case of this. So what we did was we looked at, how to make this happen. We did the same thing. We added the early release days. We did, to match, we did make an early release day on that February 21st, to match that, high school calendar. And then one other comment that was there that we did was we moved the report card pickup. The original end date was on a Tuesday, and then the report card pickup was Thursday. And there's no way for us to turn report cards around in 2 days, with the verification process that we have to ensure that they're accurate. So we did move that report card pickup to the Thursday. And then we go through and look here about, the requirements. You see they're all exactly the same, except when we get to student days versus hours. And in this case, because they tell us you have to add additional 5 days at the beginning, but they don't give us an additional 5 days to pay teachers with. The teacher still can only work 215 days. So then we have to go to hours plus the 5 days. And those 5 days, in the calendar law that was written last year, was that they do have to be, that face-to-face, no virtual instruction. So we had to separate those out, and then we had to go. So then we would have 1,074 hours plus the 5 days, when the state would require 1,025 hours plus the 5 days. Teachers would still be working 215 days. There would still be the 4 days for teachers to be able to work in the classroom for literally 3 days. Because we are starting earlier, the start date would then move up, and it would be June 2nd. Instead of the 9th. So those are the calendars we're proposing for next year. And like I said, the early start one is only if the legislation goes through. And I will say that we did ask which calendar they would like, between the traditional and the early. And it was still the traditional, and a lot of the hesitation for the early start, that week early, is because we're not really sure what's gonna happen with summer school, and if they're gonna require 6 weeks of summer school, how that would like literally slam student days into student days. And what, I mean, everyone is different. I mean, there needs to be, and so I think that was a lot of the hesitation with that early start, but it's there if the state makes us concerned.
And the calendar committee was all approved, all of those, you know, so I guess the recommendation is to go with the traditional calendar, for the president before the board at this time. But at least the work is already taking place if you have it quickly.
Have a motion to approve the calendar for 2021. Second in favor?
Madam Chair, you need to vote as well. You need to vote as well.
If I don't want to vote for him, I have to vote.
Yeah, you still have to vote. Either for or against. Yeah, you can vote either way, but you need to announce it. You need to announce your vote.
I'm not voting for the calendar.
Well, you have a majority of those presidents vote short, 2-1. And that would be effective action. More than boards, majority of the remaining.
Okay, well, thank you for helping me learn. I thought you had that through.
You do it the whole board.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, two more comments. So, and you know what I'm talking about. Next,
Thank you, Lucy. Have a good evening.
community update, finance committee, along the shore.
Good evening, everyone. All right, the finance committee met on Thursday. We had 3 budget amendments, one for state 2118. First one is state budget amendment 2118.
That's all right.
Sorry. This is just my summary document, but looks like for the state budget amendment, I had gotten 0.11 of a position from the NCVP at Shora, so that's what that is. And then for my federal budget, 2119, sorry, capital outlay, that's just to record the allotment that we got for the school bus, yellow bus payment for capital. And then I have one more for special funds, which is Fund 7. We had about $579 that came through on a settlement on some microchips that we got from Graham. It was a state settlement. So those are my 3 budget amendments. They're not in here, but again, one is for state to add 0.11 of a position to the state budget for PRC 1. The next one is capital outlay to add $118,530 to the capital outlay budget for the yellow school bus, and then $579 for the special funds for technology. So that's the 3 budget amendments, state 2118, capital outlay 2119, and special funds 2120. So I just need approval of the 3 budget amendments.
Approval of budget, state budget 2118, 2119.
Madam Vice Chairman, motion.
All in favor?
And the only informational items, we have preliminary numbers for our allotments. They're not set in stone, but we look like we're gonna be reduced by 92 students on our ABM, and so that's about 8 classroom teacher positions. And so that's all the information I have right now. I'm waiting for more, and I'm hoping that we can get together sometime in April for a budget session. And so I can get some dates from the board as to what times and dates would be good for us to get together and go over the budget for fiscal year 22. Also on the agenda, I put in the board expense report and the board report. And then we also got our results in from our DHHS audit.
that piggybacked on our fiscal year 2019 audit when we had a significant findings. So they cleared us, and I put that letter in the documents for your review as well. And then the note on the bottom of the minutes was the dam settlement. That was an explanation of the $500 that we received. And then also after my meeting, we did discover that the lottery funds for the boiler that we put in was approved. So we should be getting the funding for that to replace the funds that we put the boiler for the high school. So that's all I have. Are there any questions for finance? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone.
You too.
Yes, ma'am, I would like to, put before you to review for the next 30 days. Because Washington County participates in the customized, board policies, the School Boards Association sent us their recommendation. Those school boards, put this in effect last spring, but, in order to make it an accommodation to where, board members could vote and participate in all areas, I recommend that this be reviewed for the next 30 days and voted on at the next meeting. And it has to do with remote participation as well as face-to-face, so it could be a mixed group.
Yes, ma'am, it doesn't need to be approved, but I think you, suggested that the table 30 days or review and act on.
Yes, sir.
Everything in green is the new language, right?
Well, they've got marked throughs and how it would be tailored for Washington County. They've done the heavy lifting and used the state guidance and customized it for us. But I still think that you should have time to review it, make sure you're okay, because that's still just a suggestion. If you don't like the way it's worded, you can make the recommendations that you would like to see before you approve it, or if you don't want to approve it, of course, it could just stay as is.
Second or? Yeah, we just say that. It's right up there. We will vote on it.
Yes, ma'am. We do have a couple of announcements to make. We started today with kindergarten registration at Pines, and it will also take place Wednesday and Thursday. So if you have students eligible to attend kindergarten, there is specific documentation that you need to bring with you, and that is posted on the website. But we encourage you to go ahead and register, get your children excited about going to school. And Cresswell Elementary, you can go ahead and contact them as well if you have not already signed up your children for kindergarten there. Also, Board, we have a blood drive on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, to support our area. It is 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It will be held at the middle school. You do not need to have an appointment. If you would like to come give the gift of life, please show up at the blood drive tomorrow. And this is a way that we not only give back to our community with a blood donation, but the Red Cross gives scholarship dollars to our scholars that head up blood drives. I would like to remind parents that there is a 2-question survey posted on the website, and that is referencing next calendar year. We do need all of our parents in the next 2 weeks to indicate their desire for instruction for next year. so that we can make plans on having, to meet your needs and your desires for, schooling for your child. And we can have, remote only teachers as well as plan for, face-to-face classes. So please get that in. We have a lot of planning to do, and we need those numbers so that we can, get our calendars and schedules lined up for you. And just a reminder, since next week we'll start with our students who desire to come back face-to-face on Tuesday, March 16th. When we are in face-to-face instruction on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next couple of weeks, we will not deliver meals on those days, but meals will be available at the schools. So families that are used to having the buses deliver meals, you'll need to come to the schools when we are in face-to-face sessions. And we will deliver meals as we continue in the 2-day a week through March. When we're not face-to-face, we will run those buses to deliver meals, but when we're in face-to-face, there's just not enough time to deliver kids and meals and then get the children back home. So, those are my announcements. Oh, thank you, ma'am. There will be a, advertisement placed in Roanoke Beacon, that if we have out of district folks that are requesting to remain, in attendance somewhere other than Washington County Schools, they will have to complete the reassignment forms. That is an annual form that has to be, submitted and approved each year. It's not guaranteed that you'll be released year to year, but you are to fill out that form. It is due to our office on or before June the 1st. And I do want to let all of those families know that we will have, going into 21-22 school year, the option to participate virtually in a virtual class versus going to the school building if that is a desire of yours.
Next is design item inclusion. The kindergarten registration at times for the Tuesday, March 9th, 2021 at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Wednesday, March 10th, 2021, 7:45 to 5 p.m. Thursday, March 11th, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m.
No, ma'am,
Motion to adjourn.
Madam Vice Chair, motion to adjourn. Second. Okay.